I'd lived on my land for nearly 17 years before I ever heard the sound of a swing set creaking at sunrise. It was a Monday quiet, like most mornings out here on the edge of the subdivision. My coffee was still warm in my hand as I stepped onto the porch expecting birdsong and dew. Instead, I heard children laughing, and that unmistakable screech of rubber on metal. I blinked confused. From my porch, the trees used to block most of the horizon, but now there was something off. I followed the sound with my eyes, then with my feet walking past the chicken coop and around the old barn until I reached the edge of my fence line. Except there was no fence anymore. In its place stood a bright, obnoxious playground. Swings, slides, monkey bars freshly installed, and not 5 feet beyond where my property markers had once stood. Children I'd never seen before ran up and down the structure, like it had always been theirs. Their parents sat in fold-out chairs nearby, sipping iced lattes like this was a Saturday in the park. Except it was my land, my woods, my tree line. I stood there for a long time, staring. I hadn't received any letters, no construction warnings, no public meeting notices. And yet someone had made a very bold decision while I wasn't looking. By the time I walked back to my porch, my hands were trembling, not from anger, but from disbelief. I pulled out the land survey copy I kept in a fireproof box. It was dated, signed, notarized, and clear as day. The property line ran exactly where the swings now dangled. By noon, I was on the phone with the county assessor's office. By 2 p.m., I had a new survey appointment scheduled. By dusk, I saw her. Karen, you know, the type clipboard sunglasses on a cloudy day. HOA badge clipped to her windbreaker, like she'd been elected sheriff of a town no one asked for. She walked across the mulch like she owned it, like she was proud. She caught me staring. With a cheerful wave, she called out, "Isn't it wonderful? The community finally has something for the kids." I didn't respond. I wanted to see what else she'd say without knowing who she was talking to. She motioned toward the woods. This whole section was being underutilized, and after our vote last quarter, we agreed to expand the rec zone. It's been such a hit already. I said nothing, just nodded slowly. She continued, "We made sure it was within common area limits." I smiled just a little. "You're certain about that?" "Oh, yes," she said. "Our maps are very clear." I didn't tell her I had my own maps. I didn't tell her the soil under her brand new jungle gym still held my initials carved into the stump of an oak I'd cut with my father when I first bought the land. I just said, "Interesting," and walked away. That night I walked the perimeter with my old field tape just to make sure. Every measurement matched the survey. They'd taken about 30 feet, enough for the entire playground footprint. The following morning, the surveyor confirmed that the HOA had overstepped. Literally, the report was irrefutable. A full 29 feet into my legally owned land. And just like that, the children's laughter didn't sound so innocent anymore. The next step was formal boring necessary. I drafted a letter, plain, professional, even courteous. I included a copy of the updated survey, highlighted the overlap, and requested that all unauthorized structures be removed within 14 days. I delivered it to the HOA drop box myself. Karen was there. She saw me. "Something I can help you with?" she asked, stepping off the sidewalk. Just returning something I said, sliding the envelope through the metal flap. "You'll want to read it soon." "Is this about your chickens again?" "No," I said. "It's about boundaries." That night they held an emergency HOA board meeting. I wasn't invited, but I knew, because the next morning a laminated sign appeared at the playground's entrance. Hollow Ridge Community Park. Authorized for public use. HOA maintained. Enjoy responsibly. They weren't backing down. They were digging in. Karen, it turned out, had convinced the board that the original plat lines were ambiguous, and that my private land was actually part of an undeveloped buffer zone. Never mind that I'd been paying taxes on that buffer zone for nearly 2 decades. Never mind that I had permits, deeds, GPS, and 30-year-old boundary markers. They had mulch. They had momentum. They had Karen, but what they didn't have, what they hadn't counted on, was me. See, when someone builds a playground on your land, they expect you to yell, to threaten, maybe even sue. They don't expect you to agree. They don't expect you to put up a sign of your own. And they certainly don't expect you to start charging admission. But that's exactly what I did. 3 days after delivering my formal request, I received a letter folded neatly in my mailbox. No stamp, just tucked in by hand. HOA logo printed at the top. Faux gold seal. Karen's handwriting in the corner. It read like a politely worded slap in the face. Dear Mr. Tomlinson, thank you for your concerns. The Hollow Ridge HOA maintains that the recent additions fall within the designated community green space as defined by Article 3, Section 5 of the HOA Charter amended 2014. As the area in question is classified as shared buffer for communal development, the board has no current plans to remove or relocate the newly constructed Hollow Ridge Children's Park. Thank you for your understanding and commitment to community values. I reread the line. Classified as shared buffer, with rising heat, they were rewriting history. Karen had always been good at that. I'd seen her at HOA meetings quoting policy as if it were a gospel lording over neighbors who just wanted to mow their lawns in peace, twisting the charter to serve her mission of manicured obedience. But this wasn't a mailbox dispute. This was land. My land. So I called my lawyer, an old friend named Marla, who'd helped me file the land deed transfer when my wife passed. She read the letter twice, then muttered, "They're hoping you won't fight. They say it's community property." Marla chuckled darkly. "Then they won't mind sharing the tax bill. Let me draft something a little less friendly." By the weekend, the counter letter was sent. Legal terms, measured threats, a deadline. 14 days. I knew what was coming next. Karen held a community update event that Saturday morning. Tables of donuts, balloons, smiling board members. I watched from my porch, arms crossed, as she gave a small speech beneath the playground canopy. "Change is never easy," she announced over the borrowed speaker system. "But Hollow Ridge is growing. And sometimes growing means making room for families, for future generations, for shared joy." Applause from a handful of young parents. Then her gaze flicked toward me, and it's our duty as stewards of this community to ensure that no one person prevents the progress we've worked so hard to build together. Gaslight textbook perfect. My phone buzzed before I could walk inside. It was Caleb, my son. "You okay?" he asked. "Saw something on the neighborhood Facebook page. Some folks think you're suing the HOA. "Not yet," I said. "But they're trying to steal a corner of the land you grew up on." There was a pause. "The stump's still there?" he asked. "Yeah. Right under the monkey bars." He went quiet for a moment. Then softly, "You'll make them move it right." I looked out again at the crowd. The streamers, the bright plastic dome where my old fire pit used to sit. "Oh," I said. "They'll move. One way or another." By day 10, the 14-day deadline was clearly being ignored. In fact, the HOA doubled down. They hired a landscaping crew to install picnic benches and a bike rack. They even poured a small slab of concrete for what looked like future restrooms. They were building permanence, and that was their mistake. Because that night, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I went online and applied for a temporary vendor permit, something the city offered for weekend markets and community pop-ups. Easy approval. Just needed a location, a rough head count, and a theme. The theme, educational petting zoo and agricultural exhibit. By Monday morning, I'd hauled in fencing panels from my cousin's farm downstate, repositioned the chicken coop, moved the goats into a shaded clearing, printed out signs. "Welcome to Tomlinson's Tiny Ranch Admission, Plotterfied." I posted laminated copies at each of the 4 entrance points to the park. I even included the hours. Karen showed up at 11:07 a.m. sharp. Her lips were tight, teeth clenched, as she read the sign in silence. "I have a permit," I said before she could speak. "You can't. This is playground space," she sputtered. "No," I replied. This is private property currently occupied by a non-sanctioned structure, but I'm allowing public access for a fee because, as you said, it's all about community. You can't charge people to visit a park. I said, holding up the permit, especially when the park is technically a farm, and the farm is mine. Behind her, two kids petted Ranger the goat as their mother handed over a $5 bill with a sheepish grin. Karen stepped back speechless. Besides, I added, your HOA letter says this is a shared buffer. If it's shared, we're sharing. She stormed off, but not before taking a picture of my permit. That evening, I received a cease and desist notice slipped under my door. This one came on official HOA letterhead, too, but this time it bore the trembling signature of the HOA vice chair instead of a Karen. I framed it. Then I installed another gate. Business was open. By the third weekend, the property had changed in ways the HOA never anticipated. Kids no longer came just to swing. They came to feed goats, pet rabbits, and toss cracked corn to hens that clucked in gentle chaos. Parents brought folding chairs and picnic baskets, treating my newly minted tiny ranch like a destination. I kept the admission low and offered a residence discount just to stay cheeky. The funniest part, people actually loved it, except Karen. She came back every other morning, armed with a new complaint. Noise, smell, unauthorized commercial activity. But each time I greeted her with nothing but the same smug smile and a laminated copy of my vendor permit. The goats were quieter than her leaf blower, and the rabbits certainly didn't violate city codes. Still, I knew the permit was a temporary shield. If they wanted to fight dirty, they'd try to argue permanent zoning or occupancy limits next. That's why I needed to hit harder, where it hurt the legal foundation of their playground's existence. So I called back Marla. Remember that 2014 amendment Karen mentioned, I asked. I do, she replied. I also remember it was never officially recorded with the county. My breath caught. You're sure? I checked, she said, triumphant. Karen may have convinced the HOA board it was valid, but it was never filed with municipal records. It's not legally binding. That meant the entire justification for their community expansion was resting on a ghost clause, something that, in legal terms, was as useful as a paper napkin. We filed a formal property line dispute with the county office the next morning, along with the land survey tax receipts, original deeds, and a notarized letter from the previous owner confirming the boundary. Marla requested an injunction to halt further development and demanded a response within 5 business days. It was war now. Survey stakes went up that same afternoon. Bright orange flags outlining the exact dimensions of my land from fence post to tree line. People who had come to use the community playground now tiptoed around the markers, unsure whether they were trespassing. Karen showed up again this time, dragging along a man in a polo shirt and sunglasses. Probably a board member. He didn't introduce himself. Is this really necessary? He asked, gesturing to the flags. If you don't know where the line is, I replied, I'm happy to show you. He gave Karen a look one I recognized instantly. It wasn't anger. It was doubt. A crack in the foundation. Karen pivoted fast. Well, regardless, your little attraction violates HOA policy, which doesn't apply to non-members, I said. You're on shared land. No, you're on mine. But I'm being generous, offering access with supervision and liability waivers. I handed them a flyer. Welcome to Tomlinson's tiny ranch. All children must be accompanied by an adult. $5 per visit. No liability accepted for accidental goat nibbles. Karen's face flushed red. This is harassment. No, Karen, this is enterprise. No. The real shift came 2 days later, when the County Land Records Division called. They confirmed the playground's footprint extended 31 feet into my parcel. Their GIS overlay left no doubt. Marla pushed the office for a public notice of land dispute which, once filed, would prevent the HOA from making any further changes without risk of legal action. The local real estate forum picked up the story first. Then came the Facebook neighborhood group. Soon enough, whispers began to swirl. Did they really build on his land? I thought the HOA had a permit. Wait, is the petting zoo legal? Karen tried to post a formal rebuttal, but her comments were drowned out by goat memes and gifs of chickens running from her photo. I added a chalkboard sign near the Coop Today's special Karen free zone. People loved it. One woman even left a review on Yelp. 5 stars. My kids met a pig. My husband met the truth. And HOA Karen met her match. I printed it and taped it to the chicken shed. Wow. But I wasn't done. I began assembling a paper trail, a war chest of proof. Aerial photos from Google Earth before and after the playground. A dated land appraisal from 2 years ago. HOA newsletters with no mention of a park vote. Testimony from neighbors who said they were never notified of a community expansion. And receipts thousands of dollars of property taxes I'd paid on the disputed strip. It wasn't just about goats or swings anymore. It was about precedent. If they got away with this, they could do it to anyone. I knew the court date would come eventually, and I intended to walk into that room with so much documentation, they'd need a wheelbarrow to carry it out. But even before that day arrived, the ground had already shifted. Because when you expose arrogance with facts and fight entitlement with humor and paperwork, the battle isn't just yours. It becomes everyone's. I didn't want to escalate it into a war. Not at first. After the survey team confirmed what I already suspected, that the entire playground, including the jungle gym and picnic benches, had encroached a solid 32 feet onto my land, I chose to start civilly. No yelling, no goats. Just a letter, typed, printed, and hand-delivered to the HOA Dropbox, complete with certified mail backup. It was short, firm, and clear. To the Hollow Ridge HOA Board. I am the legal property owner of Parcel 11B, as defined in the original subdivision plat recorded with the county. It has come to my attention that a portion of the newly constructed community playground resides within the boundaries of my land. Enclosed are the updated property survey from El Ponem Land Surveyors, historical aerial photos, copies of my deed and tax records. You are hereby requested to dismantle and remove the encroaching structures within 14 days of this notice. Failure to comply will result in further legal action. Sincerely, Richard Tomlinson. I even signed it in blue ink just so they couldn't say it was AI generated or fake. 14 days. That was more than generous. Day 3. I saw Karen at the end of the cul-de-sac. She didn't wave, just stood there arms crossed, watching a group of toddlers climb what used to be my back tree stump. Day 7, the playground got fresh mulch delivered. Day 11. They added a new slide, and on day 14, they threw a party, a literal playground celebration complete with lemonade stands, clown balloons, and Karen herself giving a speech next to a banner that said, "A community achievement built together for all." The music thumped. Kids laughed. HOA members in matching polos clapped and posed for photos, and I stood there on my porch, jaw tight, watching it all unfold on my land. No reply to my letter. No calls. No visits. Just silence followed by defiance. That's when I realized they weren't just ignoring the letter. They were daring me to act. So I went back inside, pulled out my original city permit file, and made a second call to Marla. "Remember when I helped your niece build that non-profit pumpkin patch?" she said, chuckling. "Yep," I replied. "Same kind of permit." "Exactly. You're going to love the irony. We filed for a temporary special use permit for a small-scale educational animal interaction zone with optional donation-based access. City approved it in 2 business days. They even waived the background check because the animals were already vaccinated and registered. The next morning, I posted a sign at the edge of my driveway. Notice. This land is open to the public. Entry fee, $5. Includes access to Tomlinson's tiny ranch goats, chickens, rabbits, and one very cranky duck. All proceeds go to animal care and community youth education. Open Sat Sun, 9 a.m., 4 p.m. Respect the land, respect the animals, or leave. I nailed a copy of the letter I'd sent to the HOA right under the sign, and then I got to work. I borrowed fence panels from my cousin, rolled out temporary straw, and hauled over the livestock. The war had officially begun. But I wasn't using lawsuits. I was using hay bales, hooves, and permits. The sign worked better than I could have imagined. By the following Saturday morning, a line of minivans and hatchbacks had formed along the shoulder of Willow Lane. Word had spread fast, and not just through the neighborhood Facebook group. One of the parents from the HOA had posted a photo of the entrance sign with the caption, "So now it's a petting zoo, $5 just to get my kid on my own HOA land." That post had over 200 comments by the time I saw it. Some were furious, some were confused, but most, they were curious. And curiosity, I've learned, is the most underestimated fuel in any small-town fire. The first guests were local. 3 moms pushing strollers' kids in rubber boots, all smiles. They paid their $5 like it was a rite of passage. I gave each of the kids a paper bag of carrots and led them down to the shaded clearing where Ranger the goat waited, chewing his cud like he'd been born for the spotlight. I pointed to the jungle gym beside us, still rooted awkwardly over my property line. "Careful near the swings," I said with a smirk. Some say that's still disputed territory. The parents laughed. By noon, the place was alive. Children crouched beside the rabbit hutch. Teenagers snapped selfies with the cranky duck. One little girl asked if she could help collect eggs, so I handed her a basket and let her try. By day's end, I had $85 in small bills, a list of positive reviews scribbled in a guest book, and a sunburn across my neck. I hadn't earned since my army days. But best of all, I saw Karen. She arrived just as I was packing up the snack stand, nothing fancy. Just a cooler with juice boxes and homemade banana bread. She stood beyond the sign, mouth open slightly, watching 3 kids chase a chicken around the slide set she once claimed as exclusive HOA property. I didn't approach. I didn't wave, but I watched her take out her phone, snap a picture, and storm back to her Prius with murder in her eyes. Later that evening, someone slipped a folded HOA flyer into my mailbox. Dear residents, we have been informed that an unauthorized commercial operation has been established within the Hollow Ridge residential zone. The HOA is investigating and urges all residents to refrain from engaging with unpermitted services until a full review is complete. Sincerely, the board. I posted it next to the rabbit pen the next morning, under a laminated heading. Latest exhibit wild HOA in their natural habitat, and the fun wasn't just in the animals, or the irony, it was in the ripple. By the second weekend, I'd created printed maps of Tomlinson's tiny ranch, with little goat icons, flower trails, and even a Karen watch point at the edge of the disputed line. A few local teens asked if they could volunteer. I said yes, gave them t-shirts that read, "If it's public, let's make it public." And people loved it. They brought coolers, fold-out chairs. One guy even set up a sketching easel beside the duck pond I'd dug out of a muddy depression the HOA used to call storm drainage. Ranger the goat became a minor celebrity. A local baker donated day-old bread to feed the animals. And by the end of the third weekend, I had a full spreadsheet of guest donations and future plans for a chicken-raising demo series called Cluck Talks. But here's what really lit the match under the HOA. I printed a banner, bright yellow, hung it right above the jungle gym Karen had commissioned. Proudly public land, as declared by the HOA board, now enjoyed by all. Below it, I stapled a copy of the HOA's original newsletter, the one where Karen called the playground a community expansion built for public good. Their words, my terms. That Monday, I received a cease and desist letter. Official HOA letterhead, thick paper, legalese. They claimed I was violating zoning ordinances, creating noise disturbances, and operating a business without community approval. I took it straight to the city licensing office. The clerk, a guy named Jim with tortoiseshell glasses and a wicked sense of humor, flipped through. It snorted and said, "They really sent this after approving your permit." He added a sticky note. "This permit trumps HOA authority." I chose. I framed the letter and the sticky note and nailed them to the side of the chicken coop. And then I doubled the sign's size, because if they wanted to play hardball, I had hay bales. I knew the HOA wouldn't let this go quietly. After all, I'd poked the Karen hive, and the queen herself wasn't going to buzz off without a final sting. Saturday morning started with a knock. Not the usual neighborly knock. This one was sharp official. 3 crisp raps on the wooden post outside my gate. I stepped outside with my coffee still in hand, and found Karen flanked by 2 men in matching navy windbreakers embroidered with HOA community security. One held a clipboard. The other had a badge that looked suspiciously homemade. Karen stepped forward at first, clutching a file folder fat with laminated documents. Mr. Tomlinson. She began, her tone already snide. "This is your final verbal warning. You are operating an unpermitted commercial venture on HOA-managed land and are in direct violation of multiple bylaws." I didn't blink. "Except it's not HOA-managed land, and I do have a permit." She ignored that. "Section 412. She read aloud. "Tapping the folder clearly prohibits livestock within community boundaries, especially goats. And I see at least one on the premises." Ranger, almost on cue, let out a long, unimpressed bleat and chewed on a flyer someone had dropped the day before. Karen's jaw twitched. "We are authorized to issue fines of up to $250 per violation," she continued. "Daily." I took a sip of coffee. "Great. I'll take those in writing." The man with the badge stepped forward. "We're going to need to inspect the property, sir." I tilted my head. "And you are—" He straightened. "Mark Jennings, HOA Field Compliance." "Never heard of it," I said. "Got ID?" He faltered for half a second, then held up his badge like it was supposed to impress me. It was plastic, no name, just the HOA logo and the words Community Enforcement Officer. I smiled slowly. "Unless that badge comes with a city warrant, you're not stepping foot past this gate." Karen's face flushed. "You're obstructing an HOA investigation. I'm enforcing trespass law." I cut in. "And this property," I pointed to the surveyed line marked clearly in paint and pegs, "belongs to me." I took out a laminated copy of my survey, held it up. "You can challenge this in court. Or you can leave. But you don't get to play sheriff here." They left, of course, but not before Karen made a dramatic show of taping a bright orange "Notice of Violation" to my front gate with a printed warning underneath. "Unauthorized livestock. Immediate removal required." And I added a sticker next to it that said, "Filed directly to the goat." That photo got 3,000 likes on the local subreddit, but by Monday the real fireworks started. Karen had rallied her inner circle 3 board members who still believed the HOA held divine authority over every blade of grass in Hollow Ridge. They began a campaign to educate the neighborhood about the dangers of zoo-style operations. Flyers appeared on doorsteps warning about zoonotic diseases, goat aggression, and potential vermin attracted by feed stations. They even cited a fake study that claimed children exposed to urban livestock are 47% more likely to develop allergies. It was almost impressive, but I was ready. I emailed the city. Then I sent copies of the HOA threats, the flyers, and the phony compliance inspection to my contact at the local news station. The story had already gone viral once. Now it had a sequel. By Thursday night, the news truck was parked outside again. They filmed the violation notice, Karen's flyers, and the laminated survey I kept on my chicken coop wall. The headline, "Goats versus HOA. When community power goes too far." The clip ended with a wide shot of Ranger munching on a signpost while toddlers pet rabbits in the background. City Hall issued a public statement the next day. "The permit for Tomlinson's tiny ranch is valid and within jurisdiction. The city recognizes the educational value of the space and encourages respectful dialogue between residents and homeowners associations. I printed it, laminated it, hung it next to the HOA flyer. Then I wrote in Sharpie, "That's what a real authority looks like." Karen, of course, wasn't done. She sent one last desperate email to the board demanding they fine me retroactively for unauthorized revenue collection. But by now, even her allies were slipping away. The board quietly shelved the vote, and in a closed-door meeting, someone leaked this line to the neighborhood forum: "The HOA does not have jurisdiction over properties outside designated common areas." It was over. Karen just didn't know it yet. But I did, and so did Ranger. Saturday morning dawned with a light breeze, the kind that ruffled the tops of the goat's ears and made the wind chimes on my porch sing like a tiny orchestra. I was restocking the carrot bins near the entry sign when I saw it the unmistakable slow crawl of a white news van coming down the gravel road. The side read, "Channel 4, live local, real people, real stories." I didn't panic. In fact, I smiled. A week ago, this would have rattled me. But now, it was another piece falling into place. Karen had tried her best to frame me as the neighborhood nuisance. But what she didn't count on was that my tiny ranch wasn't just attracting kids and parents. It was attracting good press. Out stepped reporter Alicia Chang Mike in one hand, clipboard in the other, her cameraman hoisting a big rig on his shoulder. She greeted me with a warm handshake and a twinkle in her eye. "We've been following the story online," she said. "It's taken off, especially since the city confirmed your permit. Our viewers love local stories with a little bite to them." "Goats have bite," I deadpanned, and we both laughed. She asked if I'd be open to an interview. I nodded. "Just don't get too close to Ranger when he's sunbathing. He's got opinions." They filmed everything: the welcome sign, the permit framed on the fence post, the kids feeding chickens in the makeshift coop I'd built from recycled fencing panels. Alicia interviewed 2 moms who'd brought their children that morning. One of them said, "It's the first time my daughter's ever seen a goat up close. She talks about this place all week." Then the camera turned to me. I stood in front of the goat pen, hands dusty, boots muddy, and told them the truth. "This land was mine long before that jungle gym showed up," I said. "And when they built it without asking, without permission, I didn't want to tear it down. I wanted to do something with it, something that gives back." She asked if I was angry. I answered carefully. "I was, but I've served overseas. I know what real conflict looks like. This was just a group of folks forgetting they weren't kings of a neighborhood. They needed reminding." Pause. The segment aired that evening. It didn't just trend locally, it went national. My inbox exploded. Emails from teachers, veterans, even a zoo in Iowa who offered to donate a miniature donkey. Twitter, or X or whatever it's called now, had hashtag Goat Justice trending for 6 hours. But the moment that really hit me, a video surfaced clearly filmed on a phone of Karen standing just outside the playground, arms crossed, glaring at the Channel 4 camera crew. She muttered something like, "This is a circus, not a neighborhood," before storming off. Someone added circus music under the clip. It got over 1 million views. And just like that, the narrative flipped. No longer was I the man who invited chaos into the HOA. I was the guy who stood up, stayed within the law, and turned an insult into something joyful. The following day, Channel 7 came knocking. Then BuzzFeed News. Even a rep from a YouTube docuseries emailed me. "We'd love to feature Tomlinson's tiny ranch in our upcoming Rebels of the Suburbs special." I told them I'd think about it. Meanwhile, the donations rolled in. Not money I wasn't charging beyond the $5 for carrot bags, but supplies, fencing, hay, even a portable hand-washing station. And the best part, more volunteers. A retired teacher offered to run story time with the animals. A teenager asked if she could do her community service hours here. A local Boy Scout troop offered to build a duck ramp for the pond. What Karen started as a land grab had turned into a local movement. A community. Ironically, in the truest sense of the word. One afternoon, as I sat on a bench with two kids drawing pictures of the goats, I spotted Karen watching from across the cul-de-sac. Her face was unreadable, but she didn't approach. Didn't yell, didn't threaten. She just stood there, lips, tight arms folded, the HOA queen now dethroned by a duck, a goat, and a man who refused to be quiet. And though she didn't know it yet, the mayor had already requested a meeting with me. I got the call on a Tuesday afternoon. The area code was from City Hall, but the number wasn't familiar. I answered anyway. Mr. Tomlinson. This is Linda Garvey, assistant to Mayor Joanne Ellis. The mayor would like to meet with you in person this Thursday at 10:30 a.m. if you're available. My first reaction wasn't nerves. It was curiosity. Sure, I'd stirred up a hornet's nest, but I hadn't broken any laws. In fact, I'd gone out of my way to make sure everything from the temporary food license to the petting zoo operation was buttoned up tight. Still, a call from the mayor meant the buzz had made it all the way to the top. I'll be there, I said. I need to. City Hall was cleaner than I remembered. Or maybe it just looked that way because I wasn't there to file a complaint or challenge a citation like half the folks in town. I wore my cleanest flannel boots, scrubbed permit folder under one arm. When I walked into the mayor's office, she greeted me with a handshake that meant business firm, but not forced. Joanne Ellis was in her early 50s, gray streaks through her hair like lightning bolts. She had the eyes of someone who'd dealt with her fair share of Karens in her lifetime. Mr. Tomlinson, she said, gesturing to a seat. Thanks for coming in. You've had quite the month. I smiled. Could say the same about Hollow Ridge. She chuckled, then got right to it. I wanted to meet because your situation's become more than just a zoning issue. It's become a symbol. And frankly, we've never seen community response like this. Our inboxes are full and not with complaints. With support. I nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. She continued. The City Council is reviewing how HOAs operate within our jurisdiction. In your case, well, it's made them think twice about unchecked authority. Then she leaned in, lowering her voice. You showed restraint, responsibility, and frankly, creativity. Most folks would have sued. You put up a sign and built something better. I didn't say anything. She tapped a document on her desk. So here's what I'm proposing. We partner. The city wants to recognize Tomlinson's tiny ranch as an official community micro-sanctuary. Part education, part recreation. We'll issue a formal operating license, help with fencing upgrades. Even add you to our seasonal event roster. I blinked. Wait, this is real. She smiled. We'd like to support what you've built. It aligns with our mission. And truthfully, it's a great story. The public loves a good underdog. I left City Hall with a signed letter of intent, a pamphlet on grant opportunities, and a grin so wide even the goats noticed. Back at the ranch, Ranger trotted up to greet me. I held up the letter like a championship belt. We're going legit, buddy, I said. No more ducking behind permit applications. You're official now. Yes. The next few days were a whirlwind. A new city plaque went up near the entrance. Tomlinson's Tiny Ranch, officially recognized by the city of Willow Creek. Where animals teach kids learn and rules are followed. Volunteers painted a new mural on the fencing cartoon goats and chickens dancing under a tree. Local kids started calling it the Freedom Farm. And best of all, Karen had to walk past that plaque every day. Because no matter what the HOA wrote in their newsletters, no matter how many unauthorized activity alerts they tacked onto bulletin boards, the truth was unshakable. They lost, and not through a lawsuit, not through a shouting match, but through a goat, a good idea, and the power of quiet resistance backed by the law. A week later, I got another letter from the City Cultural Events Committee. They asked if we'd be open to hosting a fall harvest fair on the property. Crafts, hay rides, goat yoga. I read it out loud to the chickens like I was reading royalty a decree. You've all been promoted, I said. Now you're civil servants. Ranger bleated his approval. And I knew in that moment I had done more than defend my land. I'd expanded it in purpose and joy and in the hearts of people who just wanted a place to breathe. It started with a whisper, quiet conversations on community message boards, hushed comments at mailboxes, and a change in tone during HOA meetings. For the first time in weeks, Karen's name wasn't being spoken with certainty. It was being whispered with hesitation. And then came the email. Subject: Emergency HOA board vote. Property liability concerns. Someone leaked it to me. Of course they did. The message read like a veiled surrender. Due to evolving circumstances and municipal review, the board will vote on the possible relocation of the community playground currently installed at the disputed lot near Lot 46. That was my lot. No apology. No admission of fault. Just a carefully worded retreat the kind bureaucrats deploy when they realize they've run out of power but aren't ready to admit it. Wolves. The vote passed. 4-1. Karen was the one. I heard she stormed out of the meeting muttering something about betrayal and spineless leadership. But this time, no one followed her. The following Monday, I stood on my porch sipping coffee as the first maintenance truck rolled an HOA logo, hastily duct-taped over with painter's tape, as if the logo itself was ashamed to be seen. Piece by piece, they dismantled the playground, the slide that sat on my soil, the swings that squeaked into my dreams every wind-blown night. The wood chips and benches and bright blue railings all unbolted, stacked and hauled away like remnants of an occupation finally ended. Neighbors watched, not with applause, not with scorn, but with quiet reflection. They'd seen the full arc now, from malignant arrogance to legal exposure, from attempted dominance to public disgrace. And in that span, something had changed. The HOA wasn't feared anymore. It was questioned. That was all it took. Later that afternoon, Karen showed up one last time. She didn't approach the gate, just stood at the edge of the property line, arms crossed, lips thin, watching as I scattered new mulch over the patch where the jungle gym had stood. Ranger trotted past her completely uninterested. I turned toward her, not saying a word. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her jaw clenched. Her fingers twitched like they were looking for a form to file or a rule to quote, but there was nothing left to say. The mayor's plaque stood untouched. The survey stakes still gleamed red and white. The public support had solidified like cement. And the story had already been told by the news, by the children, who still came daily to feed the goats, and by the hundreds of neighbors who stopped by just to say, "Well done." That night, the HOA's website quietly updated their map of Hollow Ridge. The lot once marked a community expansion zone had been renamed. It now simply read, "Private property, no HOA jurisdiction." It was the smallest sentence I'd ever seen, and the most powerful. I celebrated the only way I knew how, by opening the gate wide and putting out a hand-painted sign. The playground is moved, but the goats are still home. Come pet Ranger. He's now a local legend. Kids arrived in droves that weekend. So did parents. And oddly so did a few board members in plain clothes. No clipboards, just curiosity, and a quiet nod as they took it all in. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The land was mine. The lesson had landed. And the HOA, they'd just learned that being in charge doesn't mean being right. The dust had long settled. The playground was gone. The HOA had retreated, licking its wounds behind legal memos and revised neighborhood bylaws. But here on my stretch of reclaimed land, things had never been more alive. Each morning now started with the sound of hooves tapping across the gravel. Chickens announcing dawn and kids giggling before they even reached the gate. Tomlinson's tiny ranch had become something no one, not even I, had expected. A place people came to feel good again. And the goats. They were the stars of the show, especially Ranger. Once, just a stubborn billy goat with a lopsided horn and attitude for days, Ranger had become something of a local icon. He had his own Instagram account now run by a teenage volunteer, and people brought him homemade scarves in winter and watermelon chunks in summer. He loved it. So did I. But if you'd told me a year ago that I'd be known for goat diplomacy, I would have laughed you off my property. Back then, I was just a man trying to give his son peace. I bought that cabin because my boy came back from the war with more scars than medals. He needed space, quiet, something real and grounded to hold on to. The cabin gave him that. The land gave me purpose. We healed together slowly, not through words, but through silence and shared work. Then the HOA came, and for a moment, I thought all that peace was going to unravel. That Karen's paperwork and entitlement would steal the one place where we'd finally found stillness. But they underestimated something. They thought being loud made them powerful. They thought titles made them invincible. What they didn't count on was resilience, the quiet, persistent kind that doesn't throw punches or lawsuits, but outlasts the noise. I didn't fight with anger. I fought with permits. I didn't shout them down. I opened a petting zoo, and in the end, the city, the media, the neighbors, they all saw what mattered. That a person's home isn't just land, it's story, it's memory, it's protection. These days, I keep a copy of that HOA violation letter framed in the feed shed, not out of spite, out of gratitude, because without that ridiculous notice, without the overreach and arrogance, I never would have discovered what this land could become. I never would have opened it up to the community, never would have met the families, the veterans, the lonely seniors, who now come every weekend just to sit on the bench under the cedar tree and watch the ducks waddle past. We still charge $5 for carrots, still tell kids to respect Rangers' space, still hang new drawings from the kids on the barn wall every Sunday. It's not revenge anymore, it's legacy. One evening, my son and I sat on the porch sharing iced tea, watching the sun dip behind the goat pens. He hadn't said much that day, he rarely did. But as we watched the children laugh near the pond, he turned to me. "You built something good, Dad." I nodded, my throat tightening. "No," I said softly. "We did." And in the fading light, as Ranger headbutted a ball toward a squealing toddler, and the wind carried the scent of hay and happiness, I realized something important. I didn't just take my land back. I gave it a purpose it never had before. And I made peace with goats, with neighbors, and with a part of myself that didn't think I'd ever be more than just the guy trying to hold the line. Turns out sometimes holding the line means redrawing it altogether and painting it with hooves